The following conversation was hosted by Harvard Law School and is proudly brought to you by the Learning Experience and Technology team.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending a conversation on the media with Byron Allen and Harvard Law School's Stephanie Robinson. My name is Mariah Kayla Watson, president of the Harvard Black Law Students Association, and it is an honor to welcome you all today. Byron Allen and Professor Robinson are brilliant thought leaders whose expertise spans multiple disciplines. They have graciously agreed to have a candid conversation about media ownership, the associated relevance of race, and controversial lawsuits against major American corporations. We're in for a treat. I would like to thank our co-sponsors, the GRIO and HBCU Go, for helping make this possible. And this event is being live streamed. Byron Allen and Professor Robinson will be answering questions submitted by BOLSA members on campus and you. So please submit your questions via the chat feature, and they will respond to as many questions as time allows. And now I'd like to introduce Professor Stephanie Robinson. Professor Robinson teaches here at Harvard Law School on issues of democracy, media, and race, and their intersections with the law. She is an expert on issues relating to social policy, women, race, media, and electoral politics. She is a national media figure and author. She is also the former chief counsel to Senator Edward Kennedy and the president and CEO of the Jamestown Project, a national think tank focusing on democracy. For 5 years, Professor Robinson was a political and social commentator for the Tom Joyner Morning Show, where she spoke to close to 10 million people weekly, offering her perspective on the day's most pressing issues. She was also featured as one of the 10 young leaders of the future in Ebony magazine and was profiled in the book, As I Am, Young African American Women in a Critical Age. She has frequently expressed her views and expertise in numerous media outlets, including the Associated Press, the Washington Post, C-SPAN, NPR, and Fox News. As a political and legal analyst, Professor Robinson has spoken on a wide variety of topics, some of which I'm sure we'll be covering today, including the national political landscape and the intersection of legal frameworks, cultural context, and current affairs. Professor Robinson was instrumental in the creation and production of The Covenant with Black America, the New York Times best-selling book series. She co-authored the first book. She also worked on the second book and co-authored that, The Covenant in Action, the second New York Times best-selling book in the series, and the third book, Accountable, Making America as Good as Its Promises, or its promise, pardon me. The groundbreaking series built momentum for everyday people to engage and dictate their own circumstances by inspiring them to become agents of change in their own lives. A magna cum laude graduate of the University of Maryland and the Harvard Law School, yes, she was a BOLSA member, and Steubenville, Ohio, native, lives in Massachusetts with her husband and 2 sons. I'd also like to end by saying that Professor Robinson is one of many BOLSA members' favorite professors because she is a constant advocate for Black students on campus and a source of inspiration. And without further ado, Professor Robinson.
Wow, Mariah, thank you so much for that, I would say, overly generous introduction. I'm going to tell you, like, next time, just say, Professor Robinson loves her students very much, and she teaches here at Harvard Law, and we'll be done with it. But thank you. Thank you so very much. It is because of students like Mariah that I love my job so very much. I love having her at the helm of BOLSA. I love everything that these students do, and it is an absolute treat for me to be able to welcome all of you to this conversation that we're going to have this afternoon with Byron Allen. I want to start off by thanking Harvard Law School, of course. It is my home, it is my platform, it is my space, and Harvard Law School does it well. We invite people to be in dialogue and conversation with our students from all over the globe, and I just thank the leadership here, and I'm just happy to call it home. I also want to thank the BOLSA member, that she said I was an active BOLSA member, and I love my HBLSA, but I love BOLSAs all around the country, so I'm happy that they are co-sponsoring this. I'm ecstatic that HBCU Go is co-sponsoring this. This connection with students, our next generation, is a connection that I think is important. It's a relationship that I hope that we will continue down the road, and I also want to give a special shout out to the GRIO for their co-sponsorship of this, and AMG. So I thank all of you, and I want to just get into it. But before I do that, I would be remiss if I didn't welcome to the stage, the virtual stage, our guest, Mr. Byron Allen. He is the chairman and CEO of Allen Allen Media Group Entertainment Studios, which was founded in 1993. It is headquartered in Los Angeles, and it has offices in New York, in Chicago, in Atlanta, in South Carolina. Allen Media Group owns 36, count them, 36 ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox network affiliated television stations in 21 US markets, along with 12 HD television networks serving nearly 220 million subscribers. And I think we just need to pause right there. I said 220 million subscribers. Now, along with the popular network, the Weather Channel, and Byron, I have to say, my father is your biggest fan. He loves the Weather Channel. The Allen Media Group owns the GRIO, as I said, HBCU Go, and Local Now, among many others. The Allen Media Group also produces, distributes, and sells advertising for 68 television programs, making it one of the largest independent producers, distributors of first-run syndicated television programming for broadcast television stations. In 2015, Chairman Allen purchased Freestyle Releasing. Now it's called Entertainment Studios Motion Pictures, and it's a full-service theatrical movie distribution company. Entertainment Studios is the first African-American owned multi-platform media studio producing and distributing wide release motion pictures and content for all platforms. I don't know if you guys have heard me. I've said a lot of first here today. And it is to the credit not of these organizations and these entities, but it's to the credit of this man. And I want to talk a little bit about the man. In 2018, Chairman Allen was selected for the Bloomberg 50 for his impact and accomplishments and named to the 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs at the Goldman Sachs Builders and Innovators Summit. And 2019 was a stellar year for Chairman Allen. He was the recipient of the National Association of Television Program Executives 16th Annual Legacy Award. He received the 2019 Whitney M. Young Jr. Award from the Urban League in Los Angeles. And in 2019, Chairman Allen was inducted into the Broadcasting and Cable Hall of Fame. He is also a member of the Motion Picture and Television Fund Board of Governors, and he is also a member of the Foundation Board of Trustees for Children's Hospitals in Los Angeles. I say all of that because I tell people it is important to know who you're talking to. And we want to know all that Byron has done. And this doesn't even cover all of it. This would be a short bio, but I wanted to give him due. I wanted to give him credit for everything that he does. And just in, I have to add this, just in breaking news, I know I sound like CNN right now, but media tycoon Byron Allen is preparing a bid for the Denver Broncos, a move that, if successful, would make him the first Black majority owner of a National Football League team. I say, wow, happy Black History Month. Welcome, Byron.
Wow. I am so humbled by that introduction. That is probably the greatest introduction I've ever been given in my life. Thank you. I need a copy of that so I can play it for my children. I have a 13-year-old, my Chloe is 13, Olivia is 11, and my son Lucas is 9. They don't understand why anybody even talks to me.
And you're daddy. You're just daddy. This fabulous, wonderful daddy who loves them so much and who takes care of the rest of the world in the process.
Yeah, they're like, why is that person talking to you, Dad? This is ridiculous. So I try and explain to them, I'm not as dorky as you think I am. I am not the little buffoon that you want to play me off. I mean, my kids just think I am. They don't even know I'm in the house.
I love it. Well, I have a 12-year-old, and I tell him that you are never too cool for mommy. let alone school, but you ain't never too cool for mommy. So I get it. I get it. I get it. But Byron, I am so happy and I'm thankful that you have been so generous with your time. And I want to start there because I want folks to know that, you came to this as saying that you would just come and talk to my class on law and media. And we were just going to have you drop in and have some conversation with us, which I love to be able to do with my classes. It's a way for folks to really see what goes on here. But it's also a real way for my students to understand what's going on in the world and how they can be impactful. And they're just brilliant. But what we did is we were like, oh, well, we're not just going to share this with the students here. We're going to share this with the broader community. And folks were just so excited to have you. Folks were just like, hey, Stephanie, well, you got Byron coming. Why can't Byron come and talk to all of us? So I'm really happy that you agreed to do this, but that you also have agreed to come and talk to my class as well. And thank you for your time.
I want to say thank you, and I'm happy to do it because this is an honor. This is this is my honor, and I'm privileged to just even have you ask me to do it. So thank you. I really mean that, and I'm happy to do it. Anytime you want to chat.
Once you start talking about anytime I want to chat, I'll bring you up to the house. You can come and hang out. You can come up to the vineyard with us. I'll be bringing you to chat all the time. So
I'm good with it.
So let me start by saying this one thing I say to my students often is that, you should know who you're talking to. And what do I mean by that? I'm not talking about who you Googled or what the internet says about this person, but it's useful if somebody is going to be teaching you, and you're going to be teaching us today, and make no mistake about it. You should understand a little bit about who this person is. And so I just would like to start really and truly with asking you about, who you are, Byron, from sort of early Byron,
Wow.
Byron before we got to the Mughal and and the kids even. What about, Byron? I believe that you grew up, I want to say that you were born in Detroit. And am I right with that?
Yeah, you're right with that. I was born
okay.
in, listen, I come from very humble beginnings. I am 60 years old. I tell everybody I'm a 60-year-old overnight sensation. And so
that's what everyone thinks.
That's
right?
what everybody thinks. I was born in April of '61 in Henry Ford Hospital. And my mother got pregnant with me when she was 16 years old. And she had me 17 days after her 17th birthday. And when you look at that, nobody would bet on that. A Black teenage girl having a little Black baby in April of '61, born without civil rights in America. So that was those were humble beginnings. My dad worked at Ford Motor Company for 30-something years, and my granddaddy worked at Great Lakes Steel for 30-something years in Detroit, Michigan. And all the men in my neighborhood, they put on a uniform and they went to work with a lunch pail, and they took their own coffee and ate their sandwiches. And I couldn't wait to grow up and get a uniform and go to the factory with my daddy and my granddaddy. I couldn't wait. And I watched these unbelievable, hard working Black women and men in this blue collar neighborhood, which was one of the first blue collar neighborhoods, the great migration of Black America out of the South, cotton picking South and slavery to Detroit in the middle class to, go and populate the factories. And you just saw everybody work so hard, that work ethic. They would go work at the factory all day and then come home and start building cars in their driveway. I watched my granddaddy and my granddaddies and my daddy try and put 36 hours in a 24-hour day. And that was just great for me to see. I didn't realize that Detroit in the 60s was such a special place. I didn't, that we were making cars for the world. We dominated, manufacturing of cars. The Tigers won the World Series. We were making music for the world.
Absolutely.
And with Motown, right?
That's right.
Some of the Motown acts went to high school with my mama. And I had that blue collar side of me. And then I had this, with my grandfather on my mother's side and my daddy. And then on my daddy's side, my grandfather built a skating rink, a roller skating rink, which I think is about 70 years, 75 years old. It's still there
It's
today.
still there.
The
Oh my
rollercade
gosh.
roller rink, still
Oh
there
my gosh.
today. And so my grandfather and my grandmother opened this skating rink and built this skating rink, which sits there today. And I could roller skate before I could walk, like
Oh, that's
most,
crazy.
like most
That is
kids in my
crazy.
family. And
No,
so,
that is so
right, so
crazy.
everybody had to work at my grandparents' roller skating rink. And my first job, I was a floor guard, and I think I was 5 or 6 years old. And what I did as a floor guard was I would sit in the middle of the skating rink with a whistle in my mouth. And one of my cousins would put the needle
Put the
on the
needle on
record.
the record. That's right.
And then they would start playing music and shotgun. What you gonna do now?
Hey, everybody, we are bringing Byron back. We are bringing him back
to the 60s. You got to go
to
to
the
the 60s.
60s.
So I need everybody to go to the 60s with me now. You got to come with me to the 60s. And I'm sitting there and I'm just doing my thing in the middle of the skating rink. And I'm like 5 years old and I got the whistle and I'm shotgun, what you gonna? And then if a kid fell, they would start to stack on each other and go right to the ceiling. Bop, 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 bop. And all these kids would pile up. And so what I had to do was blow the whistle. So my cousin in the DJ booth would take the needle off the record so these kids would stop skating and then we can get them back on the skate, get them on going. That was my first job.
This is totally like family for you from the very beginning. And I'm sitting here shaking my head in agreement because I can see this. I'm a Midwestern girl. I was born in Detroit, which is why I thought I remembered you were from Detroit.
Okay.
Now I will say I was born in Detroit, but I'm an Ohio girl.
Right.
I moved to Ohio. And I claim that as my place and my space. But the idea of this work ethic that you speak to and this idea of family, I wanted to hear a bit more about it. And I think that people should hear because I hear about your mom. And I hear the importance when you talk about her and that connection. And it's one that I share with my mother as well. But I was just like, it's interesting how that connection is made through your career. And then now you're telling me about shotgun and piling up and whistles. I'm like, oh, so this was always kind of this family business that he had going on. So I want you to talk
to us. It's a part of your DNA.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
It's in your DNA. Like you are shaped long before you take that journey. And it was just so interesting. And I watched my grandmother and my grandfather owned this business and built this building brick by brick because African-American entrepreneurs don't have access to capital that's efficiently priced capital. So I watched them build it brick by brick, and I would have to work the door and take the tickets and rent out the skates and whatever it was, put the soda pop in the soda pop machine because the kids would run into the soda pop machine and then all the soda pop would come running out of the machine. I had to go restack it. And I watched them do the box office and count the receipts, and seeing my grandmother do that, and my grandfather do that showed me, you know what, you should own the business. You
oh my gosh. Well, there we go.
Right.
There
so when I see
that's
that
it.
work ethic, right? That work ethic on my where they're blue collar workers, they're working 36 hours in a 24-hour day and they're owning it. That blend, seeing that, and then watching these Motown acts, these unknown Motown acts, Stevie Wonder, The Temptations, Smokey Robinson, come to my grandparents' skating rink to perform in the skating rink because they're trying to appeal to a bunch of teenage kids in the neighborhood to get their music off. So I'm watching these folks and I'm watching all of these kids come from all over to, see these Motown acts. And by the way, that's Black owned too. And I'm watching them make music for the world. So these images for me were so powerful. They're so hard, just hardwired into me, where you own it, you control it, you build it from the ground up. And I was always fascinated being in Detroit because my mother and my grandmother used to put me and my uncle, who's really like my brother, he's only 4 years older than me, Terrence, used to put us in the car and say, let's go drive around and see where all the rich white folks live. And so I'm sitting in the car and like, hey, this is where the rich white folks live. And my grandmother was working.
Black folks live.
Yeah, right. So, and my grandmother worked in some of the homes, and I'm like, okay. And they were like, that's where the Ford family lived, and that's where the Chrysler family lives, and then, all of these industrial families that own these factories, and they shaped the world. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. I mean, to do something that's transformative. That was always like, who are they, right? I wanted to understand them. I wanted to understand the Industrial Revolution. I wanted to understand, vertical integration. And how did you do this? How do you start with an idea and build it to something that's an industry that dominates the landscape? It was fascinating.
All at 5, Byron.
And yeah, this one, I'm like 5, 6 years old.
You're like 5, 6, and you're like working out all of this. Talk to us really about this ownership piece, because
well, I'll tell you what changed it.
Let me ask you one thing.
Sure.
How did you come from comedian Byron Allen, which I don't think everybody knows that you are a comedian, and this wasn't your side hustle. You were a comedian,
right?
How did you come from comedian Byron Byron Allen, from Detroit,
it is, yeah,
to like, how am I like I'm just gonna own the universe? I like that, the way I say it, that you're gonna own the universe. I like that. But how did you get to this ownership thing?
The universe. It was seen when my mother and grandmother put me in the car, and they showing us those neighborhoods, and they were like, that's the Ford family, the Chrysler family. And they said, and that's where Berry Gordy lives. And I went, what? That statement changed my perspective forever. That this Black man that looked like me was living in this unbelievably super wealthy white neighborhood among the world's biggest industrialists. And I go, what are you talking about? They go, he lives there, and he has an indoor swimming pool. Now, and now keep in mind, I had to walk 30 minutes to Kimberly Center to get into a community swimming pool. I didn't even know you could have your own swimming pool. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's got his own swimming pool. So, and they told me about him. And I was like, whoa, what's it? Motown. And he started here. Boom. He used to work at Ford Motor Company. And bam. And the whole night. And I was like, and he built something. And he built something from scratch. And I said, that's my hero. That's what we're going to do. And so I kind of started to see myself differently. It was the very first time I thought, well, maybe I might not go to the factory with my daddy and my granddaddy. And maybe I might not run the roller skating rink. Maybe I might do something bigger that hopefully impacts the world the way Berry Gordy is impacting the world, the way Henry Ford is impacting the world, the way these industrialists are impacting the world. I want to do something that's very American and very entrepreneurial, and it's global. And
so media? So why media? Well, how did you decide?
That's a great question. So what happened was my in April of '68, when I was 7 years old, I was 7 years old, they murdered.
I don't know what everybody else's children were doing at 5 and 6 and 7, but they sure enough were not planning this revolution that Byron Allen was. It's okay, everybody else out there. Your kids are fine.
That's exactly right. And it was so funny. Somebody was saying to me, I have to tell you something. When you were a kid, Byron, we were all outside, playing, and you were in your basement playing Office, and we thought you were strange. And I said, I remember that. I had a desk downstairs in the office. I was wondering why people didn't call me. I was like, will you call me? Why call me? Somebody call me. So I was.
I'm sorry. Go back to why media? Why media?
Why media? So in April of '68, they murdered Martin Luther King. And I'll never forget it. I was in the streets, and I was playing out there in the streets with my buddies, and riots broke out. And I remember my mother and my grandmother screaming, and like I've never heard them scream before. Unbelievable pain. They murdered him. They murdered Martin. And the riots broke out. Next thing you know, the military took over. We were, all of a sudden I'm looking down the barrel of a tank. That's something you never forget.
Never forget.
The sound of tanks coming down down your street. Men, armed troops with rifles and bayonets and dogs, and basically screaming at you, if you don't get in the house, if you don't get off the street, we're going to shoot you, and making it really clear we were under siege. And I didn't understand what was happening. And I was a kid. I was 7 years old. And I asked my grandmother, what is going on? They murdered Martin Luther King. Why? Why? Because they hate us. They don't want us to have anything. And at that moment, I lost my innocence. At that moment, I felt like I became a child of war. I felt like America was attacking us, hunting us, excluding us, discriminating against us. It's a hard thing to say, to a 7-year-old kid. And watching your city burn up when just the day before you're out there in the streets and you're having fun and you're running through the fire hydrant because, that's the swimming pool in the inner city, running through the fire hydrant. And so I'm sitting there and it had such a profound impact on me. It was so painful. And so my mother and I ended up going to Los Angeles for a 2-week vacation in the summer of '68, shortly after they murdered Martin Luther King Jr. And we came out to LA and we ended up, I ended up seeing things I'd never seen before. I remember meeting a kid and he said, "Do you want to go swimming?" I go, "Yeah, let's go swimming." He goes, "All right, come over to my house." And I went over to his house and I thought we were going to walk to the community swimming pool the way we do in Detroit. And I said, he opened the door. I said, "Are you ready to go?" And
Come on in.
He go, "Go where?" I said, "Go to the swimming pool." He goes, "The swimming pool is in my backyard." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And, and this is the first time I'm seeing, Black lawyers and Black doctors in suits and driving nice cars. And I thought, and you got a swimming pool. This was in View Park, Baldwin Hills. This is like the Black Beverly Hills.
Baldwin Hills,
Right. And so across the street was Ike and Tina Turner. And next door was Ray Charles. And so this was who was in that neighborhood. And these unbelievable Black lawyers, Johnny Cochran, and and these lawyers that went on to become, these Black lawyers in the '60s and '70s that went on to become some of the first Black judges in the city, the city of Los Angeles. And I was like, whoa. And I immediately developed also this affinity of law. Like, what is
I see that, Byron. I want to ask you about that.
Right. So that's where that came from, was I'm watching these Black lawyers. I'm like, man, that's a nice suit you have on. And look at those shoes. And what is that car? Wow, are those white walls? And I'm like, okay, now I've seen this blue collar version of me. And I've seen this entrepreneurial version of me. And now I'm seeing these Black lawyers. And I'm like, okay. And I'm just sitting there and they're letting me hang. I started working in their offices. Like, let me move. What you need me to do?
So people, everybody, we are now hearing, Byron is telling us how this all came to be, why these intersections of your interests have come together in this beautiful way. Because I know my law students want to hear about the law piece, and I want to hear about it as well. So you do have an affinity for the law.
Oh my God! You've been
litigating a lot.
Oh, but listen, I was going to be a lawyer. Let me be real clear. I was on my way to being a lawyer. I watched Johnny Cochran as a kid. I was a kid when I met Johnny Cochran, funny. And they said, "Oh, that's Johnny Cochran." And Johnny was like the sharpest dressed of all of them. And I'm like, "What's his story?" They were like, "If you really did something wrong, if you are guilty, you call him." They were like, "Johnny gets you off." They're like, I go, "How wrong?" They go, like, 5 witnesses want wrong. That's how they do.
But you didn't decide to do any of that.
No,
you decided to buy up and run things. So tell me this.
Because
I do want to ask you about the litigation piece.
Yeah, my mother.
Because I don't.
Yeah,
go ahead.
You'll get it. You'll get the story. You'll love this. So my mother, and we come out here for 2-week vacation. She asked me, "Do you want to stay, or do you want to go back to Detroit?" And I said, "I want to stay here." And my mother never asked me why. And the reason why is I went to the movie theater, and I was sitting there, and they had previews of coming attractions. And one of the movies, it was like 101 Dalmatian, whatever it was. They said, "Coming to this theater." So I didn't want to miss the movie. I didn't think it was going to be in Detroit. So I said, I want to stay here in LA so I could see 101 Dalmatian, whatever it was. That's pathetic. It's horrible. That's why.
But you were a real child. So that's good. We do know that. We got that.
We were a real child. So my mother ends up working at Salvation Army. No, she went to the Los Angeles Urban League. And the Los Angeles Urban League helped her get a job at the Salvation Army. And I used to go to work with my mother, and I would watch her hand out food vouchers. People could eat, to get rid of food insecurity so they could have homes because they were homeless. And I would watch these families come in, and I would just sit on the floor and watch my mother help these people. And then there was this pivotal point. My mother ended up going to UCLA, and my mother ended up getting her master's degree in cinema TV production. And because she was at UCLA, and because she was working on her master's degree in cinema TV production, she went to the entertainment companies, the media companies, and asked them, can I get a job as an intern?
Mm-hmm.
And she went to NBC and said, can I work here for free as an intern? And they said, no, we don't have a job for you. And she said, do you have an intern program? And they said, no. And then she asked a question that changed our lives forever. She said, will you please start one with me? I would like to work here for free so I can learn. And they said, yes. So they let my mother work at NBC. And so she couldn't afford childcare. For a couple of years, we slept on people's floors and sofas and wherever they would let us sleep until we could get on our feet. She was a single mom and, with a baby who was eating a lot of Captain Crunch cereal. So, she would take me to work, and she would take me to the studio. And I knew I had to be good. I knew I couldn't get in trouble. So I would be quiet, and I would sit and I would observe. And I'm at NBC in the 70s. And I'm watching Johnny Carson pull up in his car and go into his parking space and walk in and do the Tonight Show. And I'm watching Johnny from the moment he leaves his car to the moment he gets back in his car. I'm watching Red Fox tape Sanford and Son. I'm watching Flip Wilson do the Flip Wilson show. I'm watching Richard Pryor come on and be on his show. I'm watching Jack Albertson and Freddie Prinze do Chico and the Man. I'm watching Bryant Gumbel as an unknown sportscaster on the local KMBC affiliate. And I'm watching them make all of this television, all of these TV shows and specials, Bob Hope making his specials, George Burns, Dean Martin. I'm watching it. And I said to myself, when I was about 13, 14 years old, what a wonderful way to go through life. Making people laugh, making people
and there we have the answer.
There it is.
There it is.
I am going to be a comedian, and I am going to bring laughter to the world. I'm going to bring smiles to the world. I'm going to make people laugh. I want to make things better. So I started doing stand-up comedy when I was 14 years old. So I wrote some jokes. I wrote a monologue based on a spec script I had written for Sanford and Son that they didn't buy. They said, we love the script.
Hey, can we stop just right there?
Yeah.
You were writing spec scripts at 14, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Byron, I know this is your life, so it rolls off your tongue, but these are extraordinary things that you are doing even at this time, which makes me realize you had a head start on all of us in getting started so early. I do want you to talk to us about why the move to the law and litigation. You are a litigator, so you are a lawyer. I've heard you in your interviews. You've done a remarkable job at being able to talk about circuit splits and what the Supreme Court remedies can possibly be. You've been doing a marvelous job talking about the CRA and what happens with that and how it's an enabling piece of legislation. So you know the law, and I'm just wondering, when you look at all of this and what you wanted to accomplish and what you have and continue to accomplish, what role for you does law play in it as a tool for your idea of this kind of media equity that you're looking at, this landscape, this fourth estate kind of, that you talk about with respect to economic inclusion? How are you using the law to be able to deal with this issue of media and race and diversity and equity?
Okay, I want to jump into all of that, and I'm going to cover all that. I love that. You are the best. I just want to finish this one thing, just so you know about the comedy thing. I just want to share this with you real quick. This guy comes up to me, Wayne Klein. He says, who wrote the jokes? I'm at the Comedy Store. I said, I wrote them. He goes, I know somebody might be interested in working with you. So he goes, can I get your phone number? I go, sure. And I get a phone call about a week later, and the guy says, can I speak to Byron? I go, speak. He goes, this is Jimmy J.J. Walker.
Oh, Dynamite.
Dynamite from Good Time. He's the hottest comedian on the planet. He goes, my man, Wayne Klein, says you're funny. And if my man Wayne Klein says you're funny, then you must be funny. Do you want to come write jokes with me and my boys? I go, let me ask my mom. So he goes, oh my God, he's got to ask his mom. So one of them says, tell his mom not to worry, we'll have cookies and milk for him. And he says, be nice, Dave. So my mother says yes. I go to Jimmy's apartment. And I walk into Jimmy's apartment, and it's Wayne Klein, Jimmy Walker's apartment. It's David Letterman, who had just come out from Indianapolis in a red pickup truck, and he wanted to drive home because he didn't think he was going to make it. And Jay Leno, who was sleeping in his car. And I started to work with them and learn the art of writing comedy material and being a comedian. And he gave me 25 bucks a joke, and I quit my paper route. And I'm sitting in the living room with David Letterman and Jay Leno and Marty Nadler, who went on to write and produce Laverne and Shirley. And I ended up being the youngest comedian to do the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. I did it when I was 18, right before I graduated from high school. So that's the comedy career. Now let's talk about the business career. I quickly
and the legal career.
And
legal I'm just going to bring you up to Harvard.
No, the legal career. We want to get to the legal career because that's so important. You know, I quickly realized it's not show business, it's business show. And if you master the business and if you study the business, you can do all the shows you want. What I didn't like is I didn't like the scenario where I was being told what my value was, what I deserved to be paid. And especially compared to my white counterparts who were getting 3 and 4 and 5 times more than me. And as compared to my white counterparts who were getting 3, 4, and 5 times more than me. So that didn't sit well with me. And I decided that I'm going to build my own entity. The way I watched my grandparents build it with the roller skating rink, the way I watched Barry Gordy build it, the way I watched Henry Ford build it and John D. Rockefeller build it. You know, I said, at the end of the day, I said, I want to do something where I'm chasing John D. Rockefeller. That's who I'm chasing. It's John D. Rockefeller. And so I started I said, I want to go and learn the business side. So I went to NATPE, the National Association of Television Programming Executives, in January of '81, and it was in New York City. And there it was all the people who owned and operated television stations and all the people who produced television shows. And I walked into the New York Hilton and it was packed. I said, who's the best? Who's the smartest? And they said, Al Massini. And I said, what floor is he on? And they said, the 44th floor, whatever. And I went up to the 44th floor and I went up to his suite and he was pitching a group of men in ties who owned TV stations around the country. And he had his back to me and he was pitching them. And I watched him and he said, here's what we're going to do. He goes, I've created this show. You know, we've got the biggest movie star in the world on the show, Burt Reynolds from the set of Smokey and the Bandit. I'm going to tape it at 12:30 and I'm going to put it on the Bird at 2 o'clock. They go, what's the Bird? He goes, that's new technology. It's a satellite. And I'm going to buy you a satellite dish. And they go, okay. And he goes, I'm spending $30 million to launch this show. And and they say, Al, what's the name of the show? He says, Entertainment Tonight. It's going to be the biggest, right? So I'm watching him in January of '81, selling the show that's going to premiere in September of '81. He says it's going to be the biggest show ever, blah, blah, blah. And I walked up and I said, Mr. Massini, I hear you're the best. My name is Byron Allen. I'm here to learn from you. He's like, okay, what's your story? I said, yeah, we having dinner tonight. He goes, I'm going to dinner with some clients. We're going to an Italian restaurant. I said, I love Italian food. Save me a chair. So I never left his side. He became like a second father to me. Al Massini, God bless his soul. And I watched him go on to create and produce and launch Entertainment Tonight and Star Search and Lifestyles Rich and Famous and Solid Gold and so forth and so on. And he taught me a lot about the business. And so I decided to start my own business from my dining room table. And I started calling all the television stations and asking them to carry my show. And I literally went through about 50,000 no's to squeeze out 150 yeses.
Did you guys hear that? I just want to make sure that all of my students heard that piece as well.
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah.
We fail, we fall, we don't get what we want. But
no, you keep going. You keep going. You keep going. And so after, you know, literally 40, 50,000 no's, I was able to squeeze out about 150 yeses. And that was my first lineup of TV stations. And it wasn't easy. And before that, it was so funny. I had a guy call me up, God bless his soul, Roger King and his brother, Michael King, but it was Roger. He said, come pitch me. He said, I want you to come pitch me the show you're selling. So I went to New York and I'm pitching him my show. And I did not have 2 nickels to rub together. And he said, I want you to really pitch me because I hear a lot about you. So I pitch him. And he says, wow, he said, I heard you were a great salesman. He says, I really wanted, he goes, I just wanted to see. He goes, because I heard you were a great salesman. He goes, that was an amazing pitch. He goes, as a matter of fact, he says, I can only think of one other person that's a better salesman than you. And I thought he was going to say him because
right.
this is Roger King.
Right, right.
This is the guy who's bringing you Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, Oprah Winfrey, like the biggest shows ever. And he said, I said, really, who's that? He goes, my father. He said, my father was the greatest salesman ever. He said, as a matter of fact, he opened his drawer and he pulled out a tie. He said, this was one of my father's ties. And my father loved great salespeople. He would have really loved you. Do me a favor, wear my father's tie. He would have loved you, right? And I was honored. And so I get up to leave, right? He goes, oh, by the way, I want to talk to you about something else. I go, what's that? He says, you've been calling all these television stations from your dining room table, is that right? I go, yeah, I call them all every day from 6A to about 7P. He goes, yeah. And he said, he goes, I was playing golf with some of these guys that own and operate these stations, and they were laughing and joking about, they were laughing at you and joking about how much you called them and how you were trying to sell this show to them. And they said they weren't going to call you back and they weren't going to do business with you because you're Black. And he said, I was really upset to hear that. He goes, I was upset to hear that because I don't like that. That's not okay. He goes, as a matter of fact, I was insulted because I don't know why they thought my mama and daddy didn't raise me better than that. He said, I don't know why they thought that was okay with my mama and daddy and that would be okay with me.
With me. Good for him.
Right. So like he was like,
good for him. Yeah.
And so he says to me, so listen up. And this is the most powerful man in television by far. He ended up selling his company for like $5 billion, right?
Yep.
He said to me, every guy who owns and operates a television station will be at my estate this weekend at the beach because I'm having a birthday party and I've hired the Sarducci brothers who did the fireworks for the opening of Statue of Liberty. And I hired the Four Tops and I hired Paul Anka and Elton John. He says they're all going to be
coming.
And he said, everybody who is in the industry will be at my home this weekend. He goes, and I want you to come there if you would, please. And I could not afford to change my ticket. And so I said, really? He goes, really? So I said, okay. So I go out to his home at the beach in New Jersey. And I'm get there and I think, oh my God, I took the bus. I said, I so hope I am on this list because I can't get back.
You're like, I don't know how to get back. I don't know what to do.
I can't get back. So I'm there and I got these big bodyguards. And I go, I said, Mr. King, Roger King, he put me on the list, Byron Allen. And they look, they go, oh yeah, the boss has been asking about you. The boss has been asking about it. And I go, go right in. He's waiting for you. So I go in, right? And he goes, Byron Allen, now the party can get started. And he comes over to me, gives me this big old bear hug, and he kind of leans over, he goes, who here has not been returning your phone calls? And I said,
that's a word.
Everybody?
That is a word.
He goes, watch this. And then this guy was getting some guacamole and chips, and he says, hey, Bob, put down the guacamole and chips. Come over here and talk to me and Byron. He goes, hey, Bob, he goes, do you want me to renew Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy with you? And he knew, like everybody knows, if you don't have Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and Oprah, you're dead. You're dead last. And the guy kind of sheepishly laughed. He goes, of course, Roger, of course. He goes, you know what? While I try and figure out how much I'm going to charge you, why don't you get back to Byron and call him, figure out something you guys can do together. And then after you guys start working together, I'm going to figure out how much I'm going to charge you. And then the guy, Bob, says, Byron, I'm going to call you tomorrow. I said, tomorrow's Sunday. He goes, why not? Right.
Well, Byron, let me, I'm gonna do, I don't want to interrupt this story because. No,
you gotta hear this last part. So
I'm gonna hear it. I'm gonna hear it.
He went up on stage and he said that to the entire people at the party, on the microphone. And from that point on, everybody started calling me back.
Calling you back.
There you go. So then we're gonna get onto the law piece. I'm
gonna stop you for just a minute because I told you that I knew that we could talk for hours, forever. That's
so
why
tired.
this is a sequel. You know
Yeah,
how your Uncaged was a
yeah,
sequel to,
yeah.
get $47 million across platforms. This is our sequel. We just starting this conversation because
Yeah.
it's amazing. And you have taken us to school. You have taught by your life experience. And thank you so much for honoring us and trusting it with us. But I will be, my students will not be happy, and neither will any of the other students be, as I'm seeing the Q&A come through, but I have them. So I got to ask you at least a couple of questions from the students. Are you okay with that, Byron?
Yeah, but I got to just share this with you real
Go
quick
ahead.
on the lawsuit. So
Yeah.
here's what happened with the lawsuit. Here's what I determined. I started to understand, I didn't realize that institutionalized racism, I never had one thought. Calling all these TV stations, that was a thought in their head. I'm not going to call him back because he's Black. And I started hiring salespeople, and a number of my salespeople, white males, they would come back and say to me, TV stations are saying to me, I will never do business with you as long as you work for that end. These are things that were just shocking to me because I never had these thoughts, and my mother never raised me like that, right? So I realized that what happened is I said, you know what's going on here? America, they perfected this on women. It's what I call the 4Ds, dismiss them, right? Discredit, they dismiss you. That's that first D. You're not important. I'm not going to pay attention to you. Then then when you get a little upset about it, you speak up about that being dismissed. Then they move on to that second D. Oh, look at that. Look at that. She's angry. They discredit her, right? Then you get a little louder about it. Like, come on now. I'm trying to have a real conversation. They move on to that third D. That third D, they demonize you.
Yep.
And that they have to do that third D to be in check with their so-called Christian selves. So they can go to that fourth D, destroy you, dismiss, discredit, demonize, destroy. Perfected it on women. She's a witch, burn her at the stake. Then they brought it and just dropped it on Black people.
Yep.
You watched them use it on Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, on and on and on. So I said, okay, that's the matrix in which we live. Dismiss, discredit, demonize, destroy. And I said, how do we get around that? And I said, you know what? Litigation. Litigation. We have to file lawsuits. So what happens is I went back to that Byron that was hanging around those lawyers, and I said, okay, all right, pinstripe suit, I'm gonna drop some what you talking.
You're like, I know what to do now.
I know what to do now. So now you can't just dismiss
dismiss me
because I'm starting. I've sued. I have filed about $50 billion in lawsuits, and I'm undefeated. I'm undefeated, 50 billion in lawsuits. All right, so I'm using so you can't discredit it. I'm using your process. You can't demonize it because I'm happy. It's just a lawsuit. It's just a lawsuit. Come on now, we're just working.
We're just working this all out.
I got some
We're all
cookies.
in
I
this
can make you
legal
some
framework.
cookies.
We understand how this is going to work. We're just civilized people here.
Yeah, and you can't demonize it, and you can't destroy it, because even if you get rid of me, the lawsuit lives forever.
It lives on.
And now I have started the process of resolving these conflicts. So what I did is I said, okay, let's use the Civil Rights Act of 1866, Section 1981, which was put on the books year after the newly freed slaves, to protect the newly freed slaves, to make sure we had economic inclusion in commercial and government contracting.
Right.
It was put on the books.
This is what I tell you, speak, Byron. Go ahead and go ahead and teach them that it prohibits the private employer from doing what?
Doing what? Discriminating. So what happened is that they white people forgot that it was even on the books, and Black people never even knew it was
there.
It was there.
We all know 1983.
Yeah, right. So we've had it since 1866. And I said, okay, well, guess what? The biggest trade deficit in America is the trade deficit between white corporate America and Black America. And I have to help close that trade deficit, because if we don't close that trade deficit, we will always have two Americas. And one of the Americas, the Black America, will suffer from economic genocide from not having real economic inclusion. So the only way we can do this is we have to resolve this with legal action. So what happened was I made it a point of getting to know Martin Luther King's widow, Coretta Scott King, the true queen of America. She's the woman who made Martin Luther King's birthday a national holiday, the only American to have his birthday be a national holiday. She's the one who raised millions of dollars to build the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolent Change. And when I talked to her, she said, Byron, As Black people in America, we have four major challenges. Number one, end slavery. Number two, end Jim Crow, which was more damaging than slavery because when we were slaves, we were assets and they protected us. When we were freed, we were competition and they started lynching us. And she said, number three, achieve civil rights, which I was born without. And then she said, number four, which she choked up. And I never forgot this. It changed my perspective forever. She said, in number four, the real reason they killed my Martin, achieve economic inclusion. She said, Byron, they didn't kill my Martin over the speech, I Have a Dream. They killed him over the speech that he gave at Stanford University in February of '68, where he, shortly before he was murdered, the other America. That's why they killed him, the other America. And what she said was that speech where he said there are two Americas. One America has economic inclusion. One America has, education, opportunity, jobs. The other America doesn't. Two Americas will not survive. We must achieve one America, right? Daisy, one second. That's my German Shepherd dog. Daisy, she doesn't like when anybody comes to the door. So we must achieve one America. She said, that's why they killed him. And from that moment on, I've dedicated my life to building the world's biggest media company that will effectuate change and deliver us one America. One America. The reason Martin Luther King died for us. And we have to do that through economics, because not having one America is economic genocide against Black America. They've used education and economics as a way of keeping us off to the side. And what does one America look like to me? I call it the 5 E's. Number one, everybody has to have a great education. Look at my mama and look how that changed the trajectory of our lives by her getting education. Everybody has to have equal justice. You have to have it. Everybody has to have economic inclusion. That third E. And that fourth E, everybody has to have environmental protection. Where I grew up in Detroit, they had to tear my school down because of all of the toxic waste. And that fifth E, empathy. We don't have empathy. We have more animal shelters than we do homeless shelters. And so we have to address food insecurity. We have to address homelessness. We have to address mental illness. And we have to do this as human beings working together. And if we achieve one America, the way Martin Luther King taught us, here in America, we can achieve one planet. And if we achieve that, we can achieve heaven right here on earth.
Oh, praise God. Praise God. Listen, Byron for president, right? Byron for president. Here, we announced that. No, it is a remarkable
Politicians
thing.
get on my nerves. They talk and don't get a damn
Well, hey,
thing
that's
done.
why we need politicians who do something. I mean, I like you got a platform, you got an agenda, you got an easy way to understand it. You have empathy oozing, you have passion that's there. You have the money that's talking. I mean, I love everything that you have to say. I love this fact. You talked about MLK, and I like that, it wasn't the I Have a Dream speech. You're absolutely right that we talked that into the ground. But what MLK did say is he said that we know that it isn't enough to integrate the lunch counters, right? What does it profit a man to be able to sit at an integrated lunch counter if he can't even afford to earn enough money to buy a burger and a cup of coffee? And so this idea of us saying that economics can't be a part of this and isn't a part of this is problematic. It really is problematic. And the way in which you have umbrellaed all of this and saying, we can have all this social justice, we can have mental health, we can have environmental justice, and we need all of that. But we also need to have economic justice. And economic justice doesn't just mean as Reggie Lewis said, why do white folks have to get to have all of the fun, right? He was like, we're going to do more. I'm going to do more. I'm going to do more. And his idea of exceptionalism, saying that being well was not enough, reminds me of you, Byron. It reminded me of you when I heard about your bid for the Broncos, because I was like, he's like, that's not enough. Everything I'm doing is still not enough. And it's not just about Byron Allen. It's about the community. It's about what we are doing for everyone. And if African-American community is working well, then the rest of the country, the rest of the world globally is working well. So, you just took us to school, and you gave a mighty lesson and a mighty sermon. I'm gonna say you did both and those things. And so let
Okay.
me at least do my job and ask 2 questions from the students. And then I know we have to go back. And Byron has said it here. We're gonna have a sequel. You know, Byron's
Yes.
good at that. I'm gonna speak sequel language. We're gonna
Yeah,
have a
no,
sequel.
no, this is
And
an
we're gonna have this
ongoing
we're gonna
conversation.
have this in person next
Yes,
time.
I
Where we
can't wait.
where we can
This is
do
an
this.
ongoing conversation
Absolutely,
because
absolutely.
we have to get the perspective right. Ownership is everything. Being a part of the economic fiber of America, I cried when Berry Gordy sold Motown. He had every right to sell it. And at that moment, I said, Black America, we own nothing. And what I said is, I will build the world's biggest media company for the world to admire. And it will be Black owned. That's
Well,
my.
let me have Joya's question to you. Joya, her name is Joya Whitfall Melvin, and she's a sophomore out of Spelman College. I love that. And she said, MLK Jr. and many unknown soldiers of the civil rights movement put their lives on the line for us to dream and reach our potential. How have you benefited from the struggle? And what is your mission as an individual to ensure that those windows of opportunities remain open for future generations to come? I just think it's a beautiful question, and it
It's a
is right
beautiful
on
question.
point.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Martin Luther King died for us. He died for us to have this right. There've been a lot of great people, a lot of great heroes, Black and white. I mean, just these laws that have been put in place. What I've done is I've said with this law, Black America, pay attention to this law. Let's use this law. So what happened was, they took us all the way to we got them in downtown Los Angeles. They took it to the Ninth Circuit. We got them at the Ninth Circuit. They took it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court voted 9-0 against the law. They eviscerated it. They said, we want to go with the motivating factor as opposed to the but for that, the highest standard. You must prove 100% that you were discriminated against because you were Black. Well, you can't prove that. But when I went to the Supreme Court, I went over to visit some friends at the Capitol. And this guy, this older white guy, he said, can I talk to you for a second? I said, sure. And he kind of took me over to the corner. We over by the elevator. He says, I got to tell you something. He goes, you being in the Supreme Court with that law, he goes, it had nothing to do with that, with you. He said, there have been people in this building for years since that law was put on the books. As a matter of fact, the president, President Jackson, wouldn't even sign it. They had to veto him and Congress put it on the books because they didn't want to do it. He says, since it's been on the books, 1866, since then, they've been trying to figure out how to get rid of that law because that law creates a level playing field. You are able to hold white corporate America accountable for not doing business with you. And clearly white America's not doing business with you, white corporate America. So they eviscerated it. They voted 9-0 against this law. Not on my case, that law. So what I did is I went and got Senator Blumenthal, Congressman Raskin, Congressman Mondaire Jones, Senator Booker, and we have drafted the language with the help of Dean Chemerinsky on how we want this law to be interpreted because the Third Circuit was looking at it differently from the Ninth Circuit. And so now we want to get it, now we're having it so Congress is going to introduce it and override the Supreme Court. So I told my mother, I said, I have to tell you that, them voting 9-0 against us, I have never felt so low in my life. And my mother said, fix it. And I said, just fix it. And I go, okay. And so I started talking to my team and I go, how do we do this? And they were like, boom. Well, I said, well, who can override the Supreme Court? They said, Congress. I go, let's go. I go, let's write it up and let's start. And I started hanging out in DC and I'm like, hey, Senator, how you doing? How you doing, Congressman? How you doing? All right, let's talk. Can I holler at you for a second? Can we get this on track? And so then we said, okay, now here's how the language needs to be. So we're going to get that. We're going to get that put on the books the way it's supposed to be on the books. We're going to fix it. So, and by the way, they've been attacking it since the day it was born. President Jackson wouldn't even do it. So that is, we got to do, in order to achieve this one America, we have got to provide this economic inclusion. And that will fix so much. Right, because what's happening is that they're saying, screw education, let's focus on incarceration. And that is by design, because if you get that education, then I have to compete with you. And look at this, what happened here? I got President Barack Hussein Obama. What happened here? Oh my God, somebody got off the plantation. Well, that's education.
Yep.
You got to
Yep.
have that.
That's right.
And you have to
That's
have,
right.
because nobody is messing with anybody who has
Correct.
intellectual capital and money.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right. That's it.
Nobody's
That's it.
messing with them.
I'm going to
So
ask you one more question, and then we're going to have to wrap ourselves up.
what?
Unfortunately,
Why? It's a pandemic. Where's everybody have
where's
to go? I
everybody
don't have
going?
anywhere to
Everybody's
go.
staying here.
My kids don't want to talk to me. What do you mean wrap it up?
But I was like, we
I
got to
don't have
wrap
any.
it up.
I don't have any.
Byron, I told folks an hour. They
Oh, is
kinda,
it supposed to be an
this is
hour?
supposed to be an hour.
Oh,
But
I had it on my schedule.
Well, because
I had it on my
you're
schedule
moving.
for 2 hours.
Yeah, well,
That's why I was going on
look
and
at
on
Byron.
and on. I
Well,
thought we
Byron,
had-
because Byron, you're gonna move in with me. You're gonna go into with the class. You're not done yet. You're just done with this part of it. So let me
it's
give
on my
Byron
schedule
one
for
more
2
question.
hours.
Let me give Byron one more question here.
Take your
Um,
time.
one of my students, Joel Swan, he's a second year here at Harvard, and says there was a recent article from the Hollywood Reporter which mentions the damage done by the FCC when in the past it allocated broadband channels to mostly white players. It mentions in here reparations via the reallocation of broadband channels as a remedy. So
Listen, that's one. Let me
what do
tell
you
you something.
think? What do you think?
You know, when you talk about the law, look, first of all, I'm so proud of you. And I mean that sincerely.
Oh.
I'm so proud of you and your students. You are powerful and you need to understand your power. The reason I bought the Griot is because I really wanted Black America to understand Black America's power in politics. The white vote is usually split 50-50. The Black vote is the deciding vote, which is why they work so hard to suppress our vote. So now so we must always remember our power. But let's talk about law and the FCC. Let me tell you something. They had a law that an incentive that if you sold your media properties to a minority, you did not have to pay capital gains taxes. Huge, huge concession. So Sumner Redstone leverages his company. He buys Viacom CBS. He has a lot of debt, so he decides he's going to sell his cable systems, he was the third, I think, second or third largest cable owner at the time. And he said, oh, I'm going to sell this to Frank Washington, a Black man. Because if I sell to this Black man, Frank Washington, I do not have to pay capital gains taxes. So Sumner Redstone's like, let's go, Frank. So Frank Washington was about to become the second or third largest cable operator in America. And certain white people in DC got wind of that and said, oh, hell no. And so what they did, is they went.
What did they say, Byron?
Oh, hell no.
Hell
so
no.
they went to President Clinton and they said, we're gonna mess up your health bill unless you get rid of this minority tax certificate. So not only did they get rid of the minority tax certificate, which would have encouraged people to sell their media properties to Black people because of no capital gains taxes. They said make it retroactive to go back 9 months to kill the Frank Washington deal, which is why you, being the lawyers that you are, you need to understand how this game is being played. Listen, I always said this, they kill us in the schoolroom by making sure we don't get a proper education. They kill us in the boardroom by making sure we don't get real economic inclusion. And they kill us in the courtroom by making sure we don't have equal justice long before they kill us in the streets. This is really where the genocide is occurring. That's right. You got to make sure you close that gap. And I think what we have to do, and I've been pushing, I'm on the board of NAB, and the first thing I said on the board of NAB, we got to bring back the minority tax certificate.
I love it.
We have to structure it
so
that right now, unfortunately, in 2022, I am the only Black person in America that owns ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox affiliates. Yes. And that is a horrible statement. It is a horrible statement to say in the 100-year history of the NFL, we've never had a Black owner.
It is.
So what I'm doing is I am pushing that. I'm pushing for that change using economics to say, we got to get this on a level playing field and we have to bring balance to the system. And I know that I have other people out there watching me the way I watched the Berry Gordy of the world and say, oh no, I'm not going to play in the Negro leagues. I'm gonna
I'm gonna
play in
play.
the global leagues.
Exactly.
And I'm
play on
going
the
to
stage.
dominate globally, and I'm going after global market share, and I will own it because I am now building not wealth for me, but wealth for my grandkids, my great grandkids that I will never meet. I'm building generational wealth, and I
And you're
can't
not
build
only
generational.
building generational wealth for your own, you're
Everybody.
showing everybody else how to do the
That's it.
same. And that
That's it.
piece is really key. And so
That's
what
it.
I want to say is this. I just think we're gonna have a podcast, Byron Allen podcast.
Let's do it.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do, Byron. We're just gonna have conversations because you got so much that I don't even think we're able to
Give me
pick
some
up.
more questions. No, I love it. Come on.
Like, hit me with some more questions.
Because I want to talk to you. I want to talk to these students.
Well, we're going, Byron. We're going to.
Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to have one of the biggest investment funds, and I'm going to end up financing half the kids listening. I don't mean to call them kids, but I'm 60 years old. Everybody's a kid. Half the kids live. What I want to do is I want to finance half the people listening right now.
That's right. That's right.
Because I want to be your partner. I want to finance you and say, let me finance your hustle and take your hustle all over the world.
I'm telling you, I know everybody got a hustle. I'm seeing everybody put their hustle up in here. So we are going to, here's what we're going to do.
You don't have another question for me?
I do have another question for you.
Nobody in this house wants to talk to me.
Byron, I'm going to move, you're not going anywhere. We're going to move you to the classroom. I have my class. I'm supposed to be teaching right now. I started teaching and you're coming to come teach my class with me right now. And I'm so sorry to everybody else who's on this, that they're not able to continue the dialogue and the wonderful lecture that Professor Byron Allen has been giving us this afternoon. I am so sorry, but he has told me that the professor is going to be in the house. We're going to figure out how we do this. We're going to get our hustle on. We're going to have this with Byron, and we're going to achieve one America. We're going to have Byron talking to the rest of America in all of these various places, and we're going to figure this out. But for today, I'm going to say thank you again to Harvard Law School. I'm going to say thank you very much to the BOLSA and for HBCU Go. You guys are doing fabulous work. A shout out to Clint and Kurt and everybody who's doing that work. Thank you to the GRIO, because your 5 million folks out there are doing everything that we want them to do and making sure that our voices are being heard. And I want to say thank you so much to AMG for all of the work that they have done. And I always say hats off to my folks here, because the law school is where we allow for these conversations, that are deals that are being made to take place, and that we are able to let people in and let people learn. And so thank you guys so very much. This is not the last you've heard from Stephanie Robinson or Byron Allen, but Byron and I are now going to go and talk to my students for a little while, for another 30 minutes or so. So thank you guys very much and have a great one.
Thank you for joining us. And I really love and appreciate you for taking the time. Thank you. It means the world to me. Thank you. One America. One America.
One America. I told you. Byron for president, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.